Good day, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Leaders. My name's Mike LaCorte. I'm your host today, and I'm joined by a very special guest, Siti Subaidah. She's from Malaysia, very well known and respected in the industry, a career investigator from Kuala Lumpur. Welcome, Siti. Could you just briefly introduce yourself?
Hi, Mike. It's so lovely to be here. Well, as I said, my name is Siti Subaidah. I'm from Malaysia, and I've been a member of W.A.D for a very long time. I have just recently got my 25 years life membership. So I've been in the industry for a while, and here I am with you.
Fantastic. So talk to me a little bit about when you first started your investigation career. When was that? What type of things were you doing? What type of inquiries? How does it work in Malaysia?
Actually, it came by chance. I was not supposed to be an investigator, but because we had a very small setup, and this is something like about 30 years ago, a very small setup, and we found that my lead investigator, the person who runs the business, of course, Adil Naidu, everybody knows him. Right. Yeah. And I was actually doing more administrative work. But we found that there were some incidents that privacy was so important to our clients. And if we were to get some of our investigators doing the job, we had some repercussions from that. So we decided that for any investigation reports, anything that's very sensitive, we kind of do it internally. So from administrative, I learned the ropes in writing reports and going through investigation from Adil. So it's really a back end first before going into the field. And then you get to do the field work, a little bit of surveillance here. So that was really an in-house training most of the time. I didn't come from the industry. I don't have an enforcement industry, but it's really a corporate background ground training.
Understood. And that being not from, say, law enforcement or military background, you bring different skills to the table, right? That corporate analytical mind that looks at something maybe through a different perspective. Is that generally how it is in Malaysia? Are most people in the industry from public services, or are there a variety of backgrounds when investigators come into the industry?
I think generally here the private investigation industry is kind of a low profile, because most of our investigation, when you talk about investigation work, it kind of relates to the enforcement. So the enforcement authorities kind of come in most of the time, because we are bounded by certain policies, rules and regulation, because we have to be licensed. So most of it is actually run by the enforcement agencies. But because we do quite a bit on the corporate level, where we look at risk management, we look at internal controls, we look at due diligence, where it's more of a business decision-making process. That's where we actually moved into the private security sector, looking at all these businesses and the risk factors in this business. And somehow rather, investigation play a big role in corporate security. So we have actually been concentrating quite a bit in that area.
And then you came and understood about the World Association of Detectives and other associations, I imagine. What gave you the thought process in seeking and joining and becoming part of that group? Talk a little bit about how that started for you.
Well, my history with W.A.D is even before. I knew W.A.D even before I became a member. At that time, I was in Singapore. I was working with my cousin Pono, who is also at that time a member, and we were hosting W.A.D way back in 1986. And that's how I got to know a lot of the W.A.D members, really knew how they work. I was so interested in the way the association network, because of its international diversity that it has, and very few association way back in 1986 was in that position. So it kind of interests me, and I've never lost touch with W.A.D. And when we were ready for it I think way back 26 years ago, I said, well, it's about time I joined this association and be part of it. And I really enjoyed that journey. Being part of W.A.D. It's just not only the business part of it, but I guess the trust that you have in your friends in W.A.D. I think that's very, very crucial, because we are all over the world. And similarly, we are here trying to support them, and we would like them to support us wherever they are.
During your journey, at some point, decided to give up your own personal time, right, by running for the board and devoting time to the chairs. What motivated you to do that? Why did you put yourself in that position? It's a big question.
I guess one of the things is passion. When you have passion in doing something, you would like to progress, and it's got to do with a lot of personal development also. And being in the industry is just not doing the work, but really helping the industry, helping the association to do better, to really expand its, I would say, our scope, our business, our association business. And I think that is a role I like to play in the association. And I'm so happy that I've been doing that, whether it's in a small way or in a large way. But that's what made me want to be part of the association, moving up from being board of directors and then, the officers, and finally became president way back in 2010, I think. And it's interesting enough, it was really a determination, because the first women president was Zina Scott Archer, and from UK. And that was very, very long time ago. I've never had a woman, up in the helm where we have so many women joining industry. So I thought, it'd be a good opportunity to showcase women leadership at the same time. And I think that's what motivated me to take that role. Not that there's any difference between the guys and the ladies. We all work together. But I think it's a good platform to get the women also into this field. And I think many of them have done very well.
Yeah, completely agree. So how has your involvement in the association shaped your career, you think?
Well, I think because of the active involvement in the association, just not as a member, like I said, went up to president, and then even after presidency, carry on being in the executive committee. And right now, I'm the editor of the newsletter. And I've been doing that for a couple of years. You continue to engage and connect. I think that's very, very important, because when you do so, you not only continue to sort of learn from your fellow members, because things have changed over the years, 30 years from what investigation work was then and what it is today. So as you continue to active, you get to know the younger generation, you get to know what is happening, new developments in the industry, and we should really keep abreast with all these things. So if you don't, and you just, kind of lay back and don't get yourself involved, you kind of lose out in that sense. So it's good that anyone who join the industry, I think at some point, try to be active. At least you will know the ropes of what's happening with the dynamics of the association and how it can evolve around what it was, and a better future for the association.
Yeah, you're right. This industry moves super quick, and it's definitely changed from when you started and when I started to it is now. How do you see that trend developing, Siti, in terms of the investigation industry as a whole, both locally and nationally and internationally? What's the future like for the private sector?
Future is really very bright still, because let's put it this way, investigation is in every context. It's always needed. If you talk about corruption, you talk about conflict, you talk about in every sector, right? And the only difference is the method of how we do our work. Right now, technology kicks in, AI kicks in, the digital world has played a big role. So I guess we have to now upskill to get ourselves into this role. Because if we don't, then, we shouldn't just be the back-end investigators, just a paper desk, online investigators. But I think there's a lot of knowledge that we need to acquire to keep ourselves, abreast with what the changes, because I guess fraud and everything today is so, is technology motivated, and we have to be in line with that.
New investigators coming in that work in Malaysia, what advice would you give them? What's the challenges they have at the moment joining the industry?
I think if in Malaysia, it's still a very grey area as far as private investigation is concerned, because as I said previously, we are still into the corporate field with risk management platforms, business mergers and things like that. But those who are joining this industry, I think it's very, very important to understand the business culture. If you're going into corporate, of how we in this country runs the business, how the economy is being run. I mean, these are some of the things that you need to know before to get into the business here. It's just not general surveillance that you just want to do, but it's more than that. Investigation is just more than trying to, what I said, the matrimonial surveillance, which is very active here, right? But that's a personal surveillance. But if you're talking about the corporate world, yes, there is so many things that you need to know, and it can flourish in this country.
So you touched upon fraud. Is there a private and public synergy that operate in Malaysia in terms of the private and public sector investigators with crossover, support? I mean, we're in Malaysia for the conference recently, and we had senior officials there talking about fraud and pig butchering scams and other scams that are evolving. How is the appetite for that public and private synergy in Malaysia?
Well, I think it is growing. There is a need, and even recently, we on behalf of the association, I presented the award to our IGP. And yes, there's also a concern of fraud. There's also a concern of the online scams that is really booming. And they are also looking at how the private sector could there's some kind of synergy that we can actually work together. Of course, at the end of the day, they are the ones who hold the fort, as you said. We in this country, everything is still through the law enforcement. So they play a bigger role, but we could be the supportive role in terms of the private area, like working with the banks, working with the financial institutions to prevent such things to happen, working with companies where their internal employees, workplace fraud and things like that. So we work at this level rather than the enforcement level. So the enforcement level is when the thing has already happened, right? So what, in fact, corporate risk is really looking at is more on preventive nature. So how do we prevent such things from happening in an organization? I think that is something that is so crucial, because when you get into that, you give them tools that they can prevent. When you do security audits for them, when you do personal audits for them, you can actually incorporate all these things. So we look at the preventive measures, whereas the enforcement looks at, the enforcement measures. So that's where the synergy is I think something that we can always work together. And they'll be very happy to do that, because then it's sort of, there is, an industry that looks into this in terms of prevention.
And there's appetite for prevention in the corporate sector?
Yes, because Malaysia is like, we are a developing nation, right? And investments coming in, we've got, and so forth. There's a lot of due diligence checking up. And I think one of those things, like I said, internal controls is very, very crucial. And especially when you have foreign investors, whether it's from US, UK, the appetite for, in terms of looking at the local scenario, what you call the safety in terms of the financial investment, the security of those investment, at the same time, human resource. Because if the human resource is not equipped with ethical practice, then you will go into fraud, corruption, bribery, and everything else will fall in. So it's the human resource development that we also looked into, because I do have a training setup that we look into all these areas. So it's more, of course, you do the investigation when something happens, but we try and do the preventive nature before it happens. And yes, there is a lot of need, especially when you see the local companies. We have this, I would say, an Asian culture. It's a culture of our culture that we trust. We're very trustworthy. The businesses, they trust everyone in the office. It's a family run, So it's only when something really happens that it's really a big blow, when, you see the quantum that they lost. But when you look at the initial to introduce certain measures at the very beginning, they can be a bit reluctant, especially local companies. But when they joint venture with foreign companies, it is the demand from the foreign investors that, you have to look at all these ethical practices. How do you control them? How do you put them in place? How are your HR trained? So that is where the demand comes in, more because we are opening our doors to foreign investors.
So the foreign investors want a requirement in terms of policies, procedures, and training. I suppose training is a big part of this process, is training local either security or IT or managers or C-level, C-suite guys to run internal protocols as per the foreign investment company would be used to. You touched on a training school that you have. Tell me a little bit about that, as well as what else you do.
Actually, the center is called Search Training Center. We actually started it also again because through the investigation work that we have been doing, because we found that whenever we're out there to do investigation, especially internal controls, there's a lot of things that the organization, the flaw is within the organization because they do not look at certain measures. So what we did was we run audits for them, and then we started training their employees, whether they are security personnel or non-security personnel, to look at how do they identify fraud, how do they look at documents, it could be financial, forensic. We always tell the auditors that you audit the finance, you audit the figures. We will look at where these figures come from or how do they appear. So these are things that we train, and that's how the training started. And we are also registered with the Ministry of Human Resources, because then I'm also a certified trainer with the ministry, and that's the specific area we looked at, training in security and investigation related work for organizations. And it's a big thing right now because like I said, HR development, because we are servicing our foreign clients here, HR development is also a big thing in Malaysia as far as training is concerned. And with the new things like AI, leveraging on AI, digital technology, ESG, and all this, somehow or other, if you look at the entire module, the element of security and investigation do play a big role when something happens. So it's good that they know how to at least look into certain basic observations before, they get into things. Yeah, it's just protocols and policies.
Protocols and policies. And is it continuation training? Let's say a foreign investor is looking to invest in Malaysia. What training opportunities are available for them to have local staff trained? Talk about the process. How would they go about finding you?
We have, like I said, we're registered with the Human Resource Ministry. They have at least a few hundred, because we do a sort of what we call the experts in certifying some of these programs. So even when the programs are given to be certified, we look through the programs to see whether they are really viable, they are really authenticated, whether it's useful. So there's a whole lot of training that is available, modules that are available, number one. Number two, there's also an incentive for the investor. So if they have a company and they sort of contribute to this HRDF fund, they can actually reuse these funds to train their staff. So it's a HR, in any HR setup in any organization, I think the first thing is that they look at the training elements that's available out there, whether it's through the Ministry of Human Resource or to the various ministries. Like if we have the Ministry of Digital and Technology, they run courses. It depends on what they want. So we have it available here for foreigners who are looking at upgrading or upskilling their own staff, their own employees. Yeah.
That's fantastic. And I take it the ministry's behind this. They're pushing for this to upskill local companies in terms of reducing the amount of risk and fraud. Is that a government incentive scheme?
It is a government incentive scheme where they provide for, like I said, as long as you are a contributor, you can benefit from this. They sometimes come out with certain grants where organizations can take advantage. Like right now, they are pushing for the Industrial Revolution, IR 4.0, just to get everyone acclimatized with IR 4.0. And, every sector, every industry, it could be agriculture, it could be, the medical industry, health industry. So every industry is going to be affected with IR 4.0. And security is just one part of it. So all the employees at every level, not just because they are in the security department, but they could be in risk department, they could be in healthcare department, they could even be in procurement, right? So the training for all these elements are all incorporated, and of course security, the element of security plays a big role.
Fantastic. What a great opportunity. That's really good for bringing that up. There's two more points I want to talk about. I want to talk W.A.D because there's something special happening this year. The association is going to reach its 100 years. It's
Yes.
celebrating its centennial in the first week of September in Chicago. What does that mean to you, Siti?
I'm just looking forward to it. Like I said, having been this little girl who started with the association way back in 1986, I've seen so many of them, and to be there to celebrate our 100th year with some of our very senior members who are still there, who has been, they're just there all the time, and new members who are joining us. It's really an amazing for a professional association like us to reach this milestone. It is really a great achievement for every one of us who have been long in the industry or in the association, as well as we welcome new members to join us. And I'm really looking forward to Chicago.
Yeah, the 2nd to the 6th of September, the Drake Hotel, Chicago. Details of the event will come up on the screen shortly, so you can see all about the W.A.D, the association, and its history. One last question before we finish. What makes a strong leader, Siti?
What makes a strong leader? Listen. Have a listening ear. Yeah. Everything is not about you. It's about the other person. So listen. Even in our work, we have to listen.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Siti. If you need to contact Siti directly, her details are here too. It's been a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you for everything you do for the association. Thank you for everything you've done in the industry, and look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you, Siti.
Thank you, Mike. Look forward to seeing you then. Bye.